This story was sent by Bree from the United States. I was in college when I found out I was asexual. Dating had always been hard for me, particularly trying to match the level of attraction intimacy that my partners had toward me. My friends would talk about their partner's attractiveness and so on, and I just could not relate. I didn't feel like there was an intrinsic parts of me that felt attracted to my partners in that way. It made me feel like an inadequate partner and that I had less in common with my friends. I felt embarrassed anytime they discussed sexual aspects of their relationships or crushes, and I just had nothing to share. At some point, when I was sitting in my college dorm room, a Google search and a conversation with my older sister led me to Evan's website. I read a couple of the FAQ pages, but eventually closed the browser window and went back to my life. While asexuality seemed interesting and seemed like it fit how I was not feeling, it was not that important to me to attach a label to myself. Fast forward to spring summer 2015. I was a senior in college, and at this point I had had many more failed dating experiences. At that time, Tumblr was extremely popular among nerds like me. I happened to be scrolling through Tumblr one day and came across a post discussing the different types of sexual orientation. It was at that point that I finally joined the Avon forum and began actively identifying as asexual. It was so good to find a community of people who had similar experiences. By the end of the year, I was actively involved in Avon's forum and starting to display my asexuality more in my life. I had bought a black ace ring, and when sexual attraction came up in conversations with my friends, I didn't shy away from talking about how I didn't feel the same as they did. Whereas it used to be something I was ashamed of, I now realized it was okay to not feel the same way and to be interested in other things. And I had even come out to my older sister, who had helped introduce me to asexuality in the first place. However, identifying as asexual hasn't always been easy. A few years ago, I tried to come out to my twin sister as asexual. As twins, we had a lot of shared experiences. Throughout my childhood, she was the only person who really got me. But she's also a very conservative person who believes that traditional marriage and kids are a normal and expected aspect of life, and it's abnormal to want anything apart from the traditional. I was browsing the Avon forum privately one day while I was sitting next to her, thinking that maybe I could use it to lead into a discussion around asexuality. But she picked at my phone and saw the website and immediately told me that it sounded weird and that something was wrong with me. Since then, she has blatantly rejected my orientation, even going as far as to try to set me up with people to try to fix me. And if I happen to mention for the millionth time that I'm not interested in people the way that she is, she tells me I just haven't met the right person yet. It's a slap in the face to have the one person you could rely as a kid refuse to believe you when you say you don't have the same ones in life as she does. I've also tried to come out to my parents with limited success. In my early 20s, I mentioned not feeling the same way about other people as most people do, without explicitly using the word asexual. I felt it was best to be vague so that they wouldn't tell me I was buying into a fad or something. Like my twin sister, they were very skeptical of LGBTQI plus identities. If I were to mention any terms that sounded related to LGBTQI plus, they would instantly refuse to listen. But I'm not sure that they understood this subtle way of communicating my identity to them. So I dropped the subject and just avoided talking about relationships, sex with them whenever possible. But then, a few months ago, my mom happened to mention that she and my dad are starting to see LGBTQ plus identities in a new light, that they were starting to accept them more. So I texted my mom a link to Ivan, told her I was asexual and that I've known for years and was 100% certain about it at this point. And she hasn't said anything at all about it. No response. I'm not sure what that means, but it has to at least be more of a success than the rejection I received from my twin sister. So I will call it a win for now. I have now come out to various friends, but I still have to be careful of my presence on social media and my conversations with coworkers. I work in a government job and my employer isn't very LGBTQ plus friendly. I also avoid talking about asexuality with any of my relatives outside of my parents and siblings because they are even more conservative than my parents and wouldn't understand. I don't really mind having to hide this part of myself most of the time because it's just one small piece of who I am. But I do wish that there was more acceptance and understanding of asexuality in general, so that people like me wouldn't feel that we have to shy away from voicing how we don't feel as we are making friends, and so that we wouldn't have to pick and choose who we come out to, and so that it would be easier for us to put a label on how we feel before we are in our 20s or later in life when we have already had a lot of difficult experiences from not feeling the same way that others do.